Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So nice to have you. I know it's tough to come from that outside where there was food and drink and schmoozing to inside with air conditioning, but thank you for joining us. Nice to have you with us. Hopefully you can feel free to always leave at any time to go get more food and bring it back in, whatever will work for you tonight. You too.
You too,
yeah.
musicians too.
Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Try it with me, open my eyes. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Nickerson.
I'm Cantor Peicott.
Very nice to have you. I feel like this is the manned section, right? The whole section.
They're coming in strong.
Bar mitzvah boy and his family literally took up a whole section. I like it. Really nice. Before we go any further, turn to the people somewhat around you. Introduce yourself. Say Shabbat Shalom. Ask them how they're doing. Okay. Can schmooze more after. I shouldn't have opened up that can of worms, right? Now everyone's schmoozing. The whole man section is just going to schmooze the whole night. Okay.
He's lost him.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't know if you know about this, but there's a fun fact of Jews in space from today. There's actually an Israeli, a former fighter. Oh, yep, you called it out. Someone said it. Yep. A former Israeli fighter pilot who went up into space today. It was on a private mission, I think through SpaceX. So there were 4 private citizens who made their way. They're going to the International Space Station. And so this is the first Israeli who is not an astronaut who is going into space. And this astronaut, this non-astronaut, this Israeli brought a few things with him to go to the International Space Station. And so he's going to be there for Passover, so he brought some matzah, and he bought some grape juice for in space. And he also brought an ancient coin from the Bar Kokhba revolt, which took place in, I think it's 132 CE, the year 132. the museum in Israel gave him this actual coin from thousands of years ago to take up into space. So it's this really interesting mix of ancient and modern coming together today, which I think is very special and wonderful to think about, especially when there are so many other things going on in the world that are not hopeful. But for us to think about that this is the first Israeli who is taking a piece of Jewish history out of our orbit and bringing it into space is pretty special. And tonight, what we do every week is we are supposed to really enter a different orbit. That's really what we are trying to do tonight. We are trying to let go of everything that's been going on during the week, and can we literally float above all the chaos that we are dealing with in our lives and in the world? Can we figure out a way to actually just be and feel free? And that's what Shabbat is supposed to do. And so tonight, whether it's the words, whether it's the music, whether it's just the fact that you left your home and you got here on time, this is supposed to be the starter for the next 24 hours where you can just float a little. And we all need that very much. So I want you to just take a deep breath and imagine yourself floating into Shabbat, floating into a different space.
So to get us started for our Shabbat, we're going to call up OB and his parents to help us light our Shabbat candles. There's some matches up there, and for everyone else, the blessing can be found on page 3. We're going to bring in that light. Go ahead, light it. We're going to bring in that light 3 times. We're going to join together in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Okay, Obi, you're becoming a bar mitzvah tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to put you on the spot. What are you going to talk about in your Devar Torah tomorrow afternoon?
My Torah portion is Beshalach, and it's the Jews escaping slavery, crossing the Red Sea after God split it. But I'm mainly talking about how they brought tambourines to celebrate, so they were optimistic and prepared that they knew they were going to escape, and so they were ready to celebrate.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Well, congratulations. Yeah, Mazel Tov. And I'll ask the two of you, since we lit the candles, and this is a time where we think about bringing light into our lives, and of course your son is becoming bar mitzvah, but anything you want to say? What is bringing light to your life this Shabbat, besides him becoming a bar mitzvah? Anything?
Oh, I was going to say, just look at this representation. It's just amazing, and this is our whole village, so God help me this weekend.
Yeah, I'd say the light is coming out of the pandemic. Maple had her bat mitzvah right before the world pretty much shut down, like end of February of 2020, and that was the last gathering of lots of people, and I don't know, we're happy to bring them back.
Wonderful. Amen. Thank you. You guys can take a seat. Anyone else want to share? Any light that you're finding this week? Anything that is bringing light to your life? Don't be shy. I'm sure there's got to be something. Yes. Just introduce yourself and then share with us.
Hi, I'm Talia. Shabbat Shalom. I'm part of a neighborhood group, and there's families coming from Ukraine that need supplies, and we're all putting things together to help. Yeah,
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Anyone else? Yeah.
My name's Alana, and my school is raising money for Ukraine.
What's your school?
McKinley Elementary in Burlingame.
Oh, Burlingame? Bay Area? Oh, I went to San Mateo High School. Yeah, our rivals. Actually, in high school, I went to Burlingame and did some things I wasn't supposed to do on all the windows in our rivalry week. Wow, okay.
With us today, we have, my name's Eric, what's your name? We have family here from Israel, and we're happy they're here for a week, and they're going to go away, come back, and we'll have a little more time together, so it's great to be with family.
Yes, my way.
Hi everyone, Dana Brofman. I was at a swearing in for the new mayor of Beverly Hills, Lily Bossi, on I think it was on Tuesday evening, and then on Wednesday evening, this was the Beverly Hills Chamber meeting. They had an Innovate Beverly Hills with a panel of different speakers from different areas, different industries, restaurant, Major League Baseball, and automotive, so that was interesting.
Great. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Melanie Alkov, and I work at Hawthorne School in Beverly Hills, elementary school, and the light of this week was seeing the students are so anxious to have spring break. It came 3 weeks later than usual, and we made it.
The teachers,
so
too.
It made me smile to see them smile.
Well, okay.
Okay, we're going to continue to welcome in Shabbat with the words of Shalom Aleichem. We invite the angels to join and to bless our community. You can find Shalom Aleichem on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem Leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
I didn't know my family was going to show up tonight. It's a nice surprise. But I actually, for my introduction to L'Chadodi, was going to reference my wife because 18 years ago, earlier this week, I proposed to Julia. And so it's our engagement versary, I guess, which is not really a thing, but she was away with my oldest daughter who was on spring break earlier this week, and so we were texting and saying 18 years ago how special it was. We met at a Jewish summer camp in Simi Valley when we were 22 years old, and there was a bench that we went to one night. We were there for 3.5 weeks, and it was this utopian Jewish experience where Jews from all over the world, and you learn, you cultivate the land like a kibbutz, and you explore Judaism through the arts, a program called BCI. And so one night, we were just friends, and we went, and they have these benches on this road, and we went and we sat on a bench, looked up at all the stars, And we turned to each other and we said, I think we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. And then a few years later, when we knew we were going to truly spend the rest of our lives together, I surprised her and I took her back to that same bench, and we sat there, and I proposed to her. And now we have 3 daughters who are here. Will you guys just stand up, just so you know? I'm proud of you. Okay. But you know, L'chadodi is this imagery of a wedding, and it's this imagery of love between the Jewish people and God and Shabbat, actually. And you know, when I think about what Julie and I have been through over the last 18 years, and not just the fact that we have 3 beautiful and wonderful girls, but there have been some challenges, of course, along the way. And I think the wonderful thing about L'chadodi is that we're not supposed to only think about this moment of time where everything is always perfect, but that instead, like all true love, it's something that is sustained through challenge and through trial and error and through hard work. And that what it means to be connected to God and what it means to be connected to our tradition is also something that takes hard work. You know, especially the fact that you showed up is a big deal in today's world, right? It is hard work to maintain our connection to something that is not so tangible. It's not the Peloton bike, right, where you can actually get on it like I try and do every day and see potentially results or quantifiably measure your success. What we are trying to do here, what it means to be a part of a community, is something that is intangible. And L'chadodi is a reminder that we have to make sure that in a world that is so focused on numbers and stats, that we can actually still focus on the intangible. And Shabbat and our connection to community is something that you can feel, but you can't necessarily always measure it. But yet we have to maintain that connection. So we continue now with L'chadodi.
We're on page 20, and we're going to be doing verses 1, 2, and 9 this evening. I know, Rabbi. L'chadodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat lekavela l'chadodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat lekavela l'chadodi Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki yipekod haberacha merosh mikerem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava tefila l'chadodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat lekavela
doors where we came in.
Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'b'tzola toch emunei
lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat lekavela lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat lekavela lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat lekavela lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat lekavela. We remain standing for our call to prayer, the Baruch Hu found on page 28. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. I want to hear somebody pray. I want to hear somebody pray. Down in the valley and over yonder, I want to hear somebody pray. I want to hear somebody sing. I want to hear somebody sing. Down in the valley and over yonder, I want to hear somebody sing. I want to hear somebody pray. I want to hear somebody pray. Down in the valley and over yonder, I want to hear somebody pray. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. To lead us in the Ve'ahavta, which you can find on page 36, our Bar Mitzvah Obi.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקמך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Love Adonai, your God, with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God.
I had the opportunity to go to a conference, the first conference I've been to now in many years. It was a conference for Reform rabbis from around the country, so there were 350 of us in San Diego, and there were 150 who were online. And so for 3 days, we reconnected with one another. We had speakers, and one of the things that I had the opportunity to go to was a lunch, and there were just about 40 of us, with Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker. And if you remember some months ago in Colleyville, Texas, there was a terrorist who came to a small synagogue, right? And he basically saved himself and the other congregants there. And so this was an off-the-record lunch where he talked about that day in detail, from the morning until basically all the repercussions and ramifications that have impacted his community and have impacted his family, of course, since that terrible day. And at the same time, what a lucky day. And so he talked about a lot of things. I'm not going to get into all of them right now, but it was really fascinating. But the thing that I took away and the thing that he really reiterated were two things. Number one, the idea that, and especially as we're coming up on Passover, and this next prayer we're about to do takes place, actually, Obi's Bar Mitzvah Torah portion, which is from a little while ago, right? But because it's rescheduled, we're doing it now, about the splitting of the sea. Mecha Mocha takes place at the splitting of the sea. And he talked about the most common phrase we have in the Torah is, you shall love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And he talked about what we have to continue to do as a Jewish community is continue to wrestle with that value, because we can't give up the fact that we have a responsibility to welcome the stranger. And at the same time, we have to be very cautious in today's world that we are protected and that we are safe, right? Wilshire Boulevard Temple is at the top of safety and security. And we're very lucky. There's still many synagogues around this country that have literally no security. You can just walk in. And so he talked about the need for us to really continue to find that balance, and that it's not an easy thing and there's not just an easy fix, but we have to always remember, we can't get so scared that we forget the most common value that is articulated in the Torah, which is you are to love the stranger. So that was one thing. And the second thing was just, he said this at the beginning and he said it again at the end, he said, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm just grateful to be alive and to be standing here with all of you. And it was a really important reminder of gratitude. And that if I think about slavery versus freedom, one of the things that slavery has is this feeling that we are not good enough, that we are not succeeding, that there is something that is encroaching on our ability to really truly experience life. And gratitude is the feeling where you just are truly happy and grateful for what you have, and how freeing it is to sit in that place whenever, if you think about a time where you have truly felt gratitude and felt grateful for something in your life, right? There is a freedom that comes with that. Literally your body, your mind, your spirit releases tension. And so, Micha Mocha, tonight, what I'm thinking about is not only the need for us to continue to open up our arms and to find that balance between welcoming the stranger and protecting ourselves, but also the freedom that comes with our ability just to be grateful for the moments, the people, the experiences in our life that just make us feel so good and so calm.
We're on page 40. Yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Micha mocha, ba'elim Adonai. Our next prayer is the Hashkivenu, which is found on page 42. And in this prayer, we ask God to shelter us, defend us against our enemies, from illness, from war, from famine, and sorrow, distance us from wrongdoing. The rabbis were very clever. The evening time was never a safe time for Jews. You had pogroms. And there's this acceptance that there's a lot of bad in life, right? And these last couple weeks, and especially yesterday with the terror events in Tel Aviv, we saw an example of that pain and that suffering and that hatred with the innocent slaughtering of Israelis, who aren't the government, who isn't the Green Line, just regular people. And I saw a video today on YouTube that despite all of this terror that's running through rampant in Israel, that there were a bunch of people at the site of where these murders had taken place, and they were singing Hatikva. They were singing the hope that despite all of this pain and suffering that they were experiencing as a people, that it's so core to who we are as Jewish people to have hope. And that's really the story of Passover, is that we were suffering and we knew that there was going to be freedom on the other side, and we had the hope that things would someday get better. And so I think as we pray this Hashkivenu prayer, we accept that there's bad things in life. We accept that things aren't always going to go our way. But we go to sleep knowing, God willing, that there's hope for tomorrow and that there's always a chance to rebuild. And so we'll join together in the Hashkivenu, page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom vehamidenu malkeinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu
Shalom, 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 shalom. Try with me, shalom, 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 shalom. We pray for shalom.
Want to invite Obi back up. He's going to lead us in the Amidah. It begins on page 46. I ask all of you to please rise.
Adonai sefatifta ufia gitehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rahel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Anora El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim Ve'Konei Hakol Ve'Zoher Hastei Avot ve'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'Nehem Leman Shemo Ba'ahava Melech Hoser Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechaye HaKol atah Rav Leoshia Mashiv Harua Umorid Hagashem Mehakel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noglim Berove Choli Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Mihamoha Ba'al Giverot Umidomela Melech Memit Umechaye Umatmia Yeshua V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye hakol.
Take a few moments of our own silent prayer, either with the words of the Siddur or your own silent reflection, and then you may be seated when we close the ark.
We had our Koleinu service, which is what this service is. It means our voices, what was basically a month ago at the Glazer campus. And that was the first week that the fighting had broken out in Ukraine, the first week of the invasion. And it's hard to believe that we're a month later and we're still watching the atrocities that are occurring every single day to men, women, and children. I looked up and we're at 1,500 people lost. And it's just so heartbreaking what it is that we are witnessing. And so on that night, when it was the first week of the invasion, we offered this folk melody called Peicott, that translates as the duckling swims. And in it, there's a story of a young duckling who asks its mother, the young duckling's about to go off to war, and the duckling says, "But mother, what will happen to my body? What will happen to my body if I'm killed in enemy lines?" And the mother responds, you'll have to depend on the kindness of others, that they will be the ones to bury you in your homeland. And so I just send this folk melody that has kept the Ukrainian people strong for generations out to them tonight. This is Peicott.
always take a moment to offer a Misha Berach. Fitting to follow that song. Really just a moment for us to think about those in our own lives and of course around the world who are in need of healing. In our Koleinu service, we like to take it just a step further if possible from just sharing names or just saying them in your heart, but to actually verbalizing the names of people whom you're thinking of out loud and maybe even saying what kind of prayer you're hoping that they can receive based on the kind of healing that they need. So I just want to open it up if there's anyone who has someone whom they're thinking of who is in need of any kind of healing. If you want to raise your hand. Yeah.
Penguin.
Moshe Gedalia, Ben Meir.
Jerome Marks.
Anna Hagen.
The Kessler family. Morris Kessler.
Stan King, Richard Ross.
My husband, Michael Alkov, who is going to be living in an assisted living in Beverly Hills tomorrow, getting stronger from Parkinson's. And then our daughter, Nicole Alkov, who's just having a difficult time recovering from cancer treatments. The cancer treatment was successful, but she's having a difficult time. And I also want to say how great it is to be here. I'm really appreciative and to be at this particular campus.
Kate Koffler, who's a new member of the Wilshire University family that I met at the Dine Around, who's recovering from hernia surgery and who just recently lost her husband 3 months ago. So my heart goes out to her and wish her a recuperation.
My cousin Vicky Remus. Sandy Weissman.
My son Matthew.
My dad Marty.
My grandpa Gramps.
We're thinking about all of them. We're also thinking about a few people who were added to our Misha Berach list. Denise Nahorai, Kayla Schwartz, Charles Schwartz, Marcy Siegel, Alan Soroti, and Melody Smolkin.
Misha Berach,
Cantor just saying the phrase El Na Rafan Allah, and that comes from a story in the book of Numbers. It's about Moses and his two siblings, Aaron and Miriam. And Aaron and Miriam are talking about the fact that Moses married this woman who's a Cushite, who's not an Israelite. And they're basically talking about her behind Moses' back and behind her back. Her name was Tzipporah. And so God gets very upset about this and speaks to them and says, how dare you, of all the people, Moses is the most special to me, and yet you are talking about him behind his back and behind his wife's back, and as a result, I'm going to punish you. And so he punishes Miriam by giving her this kind of, as it says in the Torah, this white leprous scale disease on her skin. And she is then forced to leave the group and has to go and live for a week, for 7 days outside the camp. And only then can she return to the camp after she has spent time away. And God says, because of the way that you were speaking about Moses' wife, this is your punishment. Well, it's linked very much to this week's Torah portion, because last week and this week are some of the most challenging for all bar and bat mitzvah students. It's actually just the most challenging anyway for most of us to read, because it talks about the skin disease that usually gets translated as leprosy, but it's not really leprosy. And then in the second part of this week's Torah portion, it talks about bodily emissions from men and women. So that, for bar and bat mitzvah students to have to read that is like the worst thing in the world. But the rabbis draw a link between that story from the book of Numbers, which hasn't happened yet in our cycle, right, because we're in the book of Leviticus, and what is being talked about in the Torah portions last week and this week, because on most years, those two Torah portions are read together at the same Shabbat. And there are only certain years where they are read on separate Shabbats, like this year. So Tazria and Mitzorah, and this week is Mitzorah. And it's talking about this thing called Sara'at, which is this leprous, scaly skin disease. And it talks about how when this happens, it doesn't really say why it happens, but when it happens, you have to go through a whole process to become purified. And you have to leave the camp, the Israelite camp, for 7 days and be isolated. And then you have to come back to the camp. And then you can't go back to your home yet right away. And for another week, you have to stay in the camp but not in your home. And then finally, after another ritual and sacrifice at the temple, then finally you can go back into your home. So there are these multiple steps. And the rabbis are trying to figure out, well, was this about an actual physical ailment? Like if we were to go to dermatologists, would they be able to identify a skin disease that is being referenced in the Torah? And supposedly, according to research done by experts and dermatologists, it doesn't seem to actually be a real skin disease. So the rabbis realize that this isn't actually about a physical problem. This is about a spiritual problem. This is about a moral problem. And so they draw a link between El Na Rafan Allah, which is what Moses says when his sister is in pain. He says, God, please cure her, right? And so we now use it as part of a Mishaberach prayer, the words of Moses speaking on behalf of his sister to God. And they draw a link between this passage about Miriam talking smack about Moses' wife and this funky skin disease that also can encroach on your home and cause this plague in your home. And what is the connection? And so the rabbis make a connection that what the real plague is that's being discussed in this week's Torah portion is something called Motzi Shem Ra, which is basically evil speech, slander, gossip. And they say that what is happening here, and the link between the story about Miriam and what's happening in this week's Torah portion, is that one of the worst things that we can do is gossip and slander someone else. That is one of the worst things we can do. They talk about that there are many sins, this is one of the worst. And they actually, in the Talmud, Penina was on earlier today when I did Torah study, where we talk in the Talmud, they list out 7 sins that are really bad. Greed and, incest and all these terrible things, but that the sin of slandering and gossiping about someone else is equal to all of them. And so they're trying to understand, well, what are we supposed to do about this? And there's a book group that we have at the synagogue for staff We're reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. It's a great book. Stephanie's in it. Cantor Lisa's in it with me. And we just read this week a section about shame and the power of shame, the negative power of shame, and how we deal with shame in our own lives. And the difference between shame and guilt, of course, is the idea of shame is that I am not good, right? I am not worthy. I am bad at X or Y, as opposed to guilt, which is I feel bad that I did something wrong. But shame is internalizing the fact that you are not good enough. And what's interesting is that we are a culture, a guilt-based culture. Now, there's a difference between a guilt culture and a shame culture. A shame culture usually is one in which it's focused on the image, what your image is to the outside world, how your actions, how you are going to be judged by everyone else, and you have to be very aware of how you are acting, because if you go out of line, this culture will shame you. If we think about social media as a great example of how people get shamed very easily on social media. When people lash out at someone else, shame them very easily. But we as a tradition are more of a guilt-based culture, Judaism, which is more about thinking about our moral compass, and that we're less focused on what other people think about us and more focused on, are we making the right moral choices? And that when you go off the tracks and you make the wrong choices, you feel guilty for the fact that you did something wrong. We all know that the Jewish guilt is pronounced, right? And shame is usually not something we focus on. One of the things you're not supposed to do in our tradition is to shame someone or embarrass them. That's one of the rules of our tradition. You're not supposed to do that. And yet, here is one of the few examples the rabbis say where it's okay to shame someone. That what is happening in this Torah portion about gossip and about slander, that is one of the few times where we have no choice but to shame someone into changing their ways. Because someone who gossips, someone who's talking behind someone's back, can easily deny their actions, can easily get away with it. And that in order for us to stop it, we actually have to literally shame them. Just as what happens in this Torah portion. The person gets kicked out of the community for a while, they are ostracized, they are told, you need to go through these steps in order to return to society. And so it's this really interesting moment where we go from guilt into shame. And I think it's because we know what it means to use our words. If you think about how the world was created, how does God create the world? With words. That's how God creates the world. God says, let there be light, and there is light, right? It is through words that the world is created. And so from the very beginning of our tradition, from the very beginning of the Torah, we recognize that words have the power to create, and at the same time have the power to destroy. And so in this Torah portion, we are reminded that in today's world, with all the shaming that can happen out there, that we have a responsibility, number one, to call out gossip and slander, and that we have to be brave enough to hold people accountable when they are not morally upright. When they are saying things, when people just are randomly chit-chatting now, especially now that we're actually gathering back in person and people can gossip more now in person, not just online, we have a responsibility to not let people get away with that, because the power of words is so central to us that we can't let people get away with using words to destroy. And so as we move into Passover, and we again repeat that phrase, we were strangers in the land of Egypt, as Brene Brown teaches in Dare to Lead, the antidote to shame is empathy. And empathy, different than sympathy. Empathy is to actually truly put yourself in a place where you can connect with whatever challenge the other person is having and dealing with, even if you haven't specifically had that same exact issue. That when we are saying we were strangers in the land of Egypt, we are being reminded of the need to be empathetic. We are reminded of the power of empathy. If we can really bring back this idea of what does it really feel like to be going through what that person is going through? Can we connect with that in some way? Can we take the time to be vulnerable? Can we take the space to truly try and connect with another person? Empathy is the antidote to all of that slander and that gossip. And that, yes, there are times where we're going to have to call people out, but if we can focus more and more about the role of empathy in our lives, we can bring more of things into creation as opposed to more destruction. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to move now, just a few announcements before Mourner's Kaddish. As I said, Passover is coming up. There is a second night Passover Seder.
Saturday night, April 16th, on this campus at 5:30, led by myself and Rabbi David Eshel. We have part of our amazing band that's going to be accompanying the Seder. It should be a great time, and you can find information in the bulletins that they send out, but you can also find it on the website.
And that's a communal, all ages welcome.
All ages.
Right. And then there's a women's Seder Tuesday?
Monday night,
Monday night.
April 11th. So we do it the week before because we also recognize that most of the women are cooking and preparing the Passover Seders for their family. So we will gather on, I'm sure you do cooking too.
Yes.
So we will gather on this Monday night, April 11th at 6 o'clock, I believe, out in our courtyard chapel area. And that's for women of all ages. We don't have any age limits. We just ask that the children that attend, the young ladies that attend, are able to sit through about a 2-hour Seder experience. So hope you can join us.
Okay. With that, we're going to move now to the Mourner's Kaddish. Before I read the names, again, just like with Misha Berach, if there are names of people whom you're thinking of who are no longer with us and you want to share their name and maybe you want to say something about them, also at the Torah study today, we talked about the power of legacy. And one of the ways that we maintain legacy and keep someone's memory alive is by sharing things about them. So I just want to open it up before I read the list of names from our own community. Is there anyone who has a name that they'd like to share tonight of someone whom they're remembering and thinking of, and maybe something about that person?
One's an animal called Peaches, and one is a human called Mimi, who's my great-grandma.
My brother Andy, he was an awesome dude.
My good friend also adopted a family called Sun Li. I call him Jojo, which in Chinese means uncle. He was the only people I know when I came to stay by myself. And he was there for me last 7 years, and he passed away early this year. I'm still missing him all the time.
Florence Kay, she was 98, and her legacy lives on in her children, her grandchildren, and 13 great-grandchildren.
Mark Kessler is an amazing man, brother, stepbrother, husband, father, son, and his legacy lives on through his children, Noah and Quinn.
Anyone else?
Pat McCormick, Obie and Maple's grandfather, and his legacy lives on through them.
Think about all of them. We think about these people who passed away within the last month. Ted Bird, Anna Chinsky, Hillary Turtletaub Costin, Mike Culver, Regina and Marco, Sid Kolpus, Coco Canar, Sivia Morrison, J.C. Nadell, Eunice Nazarian, Jeremy Orlando, Blossom Smith, Donald Van, Florence Kay, Mark Kessler, Nehemiah Persoff, and Vu Pham Hong. And then we think about the yard sites whom we're commemorating on this Shabbat: Nate Adlin, Winifred Anderson, Moses Armel, Alvin Astor, Roberta Barr, Lori Bumwall, Cindy Bender, Evan Bennett, Jack Berman, Joseph Barrow, Reba Block, Leslie Bluestone, Ronald Blumpkin, Robert Cohen, Ben Cohn, Sam Cooper, Elliot Disner, Victor Eport, Mark Epstein, George Epstein, Musa Farhadi, Beatrice Ferris, Max Fields, W. Ben Finkel, Dave Fox, Ivan Freistad, Edu Fulop, Louis Gerald, Paul Goldberg, Sophia Gray Goldman, Theodore Gordon, Mark Greenstein, Teresa Grossblatt, Eleanor Hallam, Rose Hamburger, Tibor Human, Betty Hollander, Mitchell Jarko, Ethel Kine, John King, Sylvia Klausner, Sandra Kobata, Robert Konov, Dora Kreshek, Richard Colwyn, Morris Lee Kurtz, Lynette Kurtzman, Bob Coit, Louis Lackman, Wendy Landis, Barbara Landau, Morris Levine, Emmanuel Lewis, Charles Lieber, Barbara Lippman, Hans Lowe, Lester Majoifis, Alice Rose Malin, Thelma Marshall, Marcus Marin, Belle Miller, Leonard Miller, Eleonora Mindell, Nathan Nordell, Rosalind Ostrovsky, Ernest Phillips, Grace Pollock, Arno Prince, Hannah Pushin, Albert Rise, Myron Rosenbach, Arnold Rosenthal, Max Sanders, Reva Sandler, Ethel Schatz, Bernard Schiff, Linda Schneid, Simon Schwartz, Ione Siegel, Christina Siegel, Linda Silverman, Odell Silverstein, Harry Silverstein, Leo Simons, Katie Skluth, Mark Slangberg, Selma Sobel, Edmund Somach, Bella Steyer, Marilyn Stein, Stephen Sturman, Justin Herbert Strawgate, Semyon Veshtok, Leah Valner, Norma Wachtman, Philip Wexler, William Weil, Doris Weiner, Evelyn Weissman, David Wolf, Julius Zellman. Also thinking about those who were killed in Sacramento earlier this week. The 3 Israelis who were killed by terrorists last night, Thursday night. Tomer Morad, Eitam Magini, and Barak Lufan. There were 13 people in Israel over the last 2.5 weeks who have been killed by terror. And of course, all those in Ukraine who have also died. We're thinking about all of them. If you are in the period of Shiva, in the period of 7 days since the passing of a loved one, if you could please rise at this time. And if you are in the period of Shloshim, it's in the first 30 days since the passing of someone in your life. And if you are here to commemorate a yahrzeit of someone in particular, or you are in your first year of mourning, if you could please rise at this time. And I ask all of us to please rise. We join together page 294 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'vizman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudesha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da miran belma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'ol kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'ol kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen.
Oseh shalom imromav.
Feel free to put your arms around the people near you.
Yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to stay standing for our Friday evening Kiddush, which Obi is going to lead us in.
I'm coming with the Kiddush cup.
He's running.
We're on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu v'shabbat kodsho ba'avha uvratzon inclanu zikaron lemase bereshit ki hu yom tehila lem yikrai kodesh zecher litzayat Mitzrayim.
There will be challah in the back, so we'll lead motzi, and then feel free to help yourself to more kiddush and motzi. Thank you to the band so much for being here and for all of your talents. Mazal tov to the Mann family. Thank you, of course, to the Cantor. Thank you all for being here with us tonight.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone.